Most people go through their entire lives thinking they are in control, but the truth is that they are only existing, lost between thoughts, trapped in the past and anxious about the future. The scariest part? They believe this is normal. But there is a reason why so many feel tired, disconnected, and empty even while doing everything right. No one taught the real secret. Living in the now is a discipline, not an accident. Have you noticed that even in good moments, the mind tries to pull you somewhere that doesn't exist? When something goes wrong, it throws you backward. When something goes right, it pushes you forward. It's like trying to drive with your eyes glued to the rearview mirror. No matter how hard you accelerate, you will crash. And the most curious part is that no one tells you this openly, as if we were all hypnotized by an automatic life. There's one counterintuitive detail that few people understand. The more you try to control everything, the less control you actually have. Life does not respond to force. It responds to presence. And when someone understands this, it's as if a secret door opens inside them. A door to clarity, to peace, to true self-discipline, the kind that comes from within, not from external pressure. But here comes the uncomfortable part. Being present is simple, but not easy. It takes courage to face the mind, strength to break old habits, and discipline not to run away from yourself. The now is a demanding master. It gives you everything, but only after stripping away all the distractions that keep you from truly living. That's why so few people manage it, and the few who do completely change their lives. And if you feel like you've been living in survival mode, if you feel that something inside you is asleep, if you feel there's more, much more, than what your routine shows you, then you are in the right place. Here begins the journey of reconnecting your mind, your identity, and your essence to the only place where life truly happens, the present moment. Presence, or presence, as many like to call it, is that silent force that transforms anyone who learns to use it. When someone decides to truly be where their feet are, something awakens within them. A kind of inner peace appears that doesn't depend on external noise or anyone's approval. It's curious how people spend their whole lives chasing things, but almost never stop to notice where they actually are. This simple act already changes their identity. And of course, it requires self-discipline to remain attentive to the now. Most people try to live in the present with their minds in the future and their hearts stuck in the past, and then wonder why they feel no mental clarity. It's like trying to watch two different movies at the same time. Those who master presence realize the power is not in predicting everything, but in observing what unfolds before their eyes. In that instant, inner peace appears like a deep breath, and that breath alone begins to reshape their identity. It's impressive how simple this seems, but it requires daily self-discipline. Imagine someone sitting at a table, trying to listen to another person but feeling accelerated inside, thinking about deadlines, bills, and unanswered messages. When there is no presence, not even the best friend can be heard properly. But when the person anchors themselves in the now, the conversation changes completely. They notice details, tones, intentions, subtle emotions. This deep listening creates an immediate sense of inner peace. And this, over time, reshapes their identity when practiced with consistency. A good example of this is the habit of having breakfast. Most people eat automatically, swallow and run. But try stopping one day to observe the aroma, the texture, the warmth of the cup, pure presence. This simple act releases an absurd amount of mental clarity. You go through the day less reactive, more lucid, more aligned with your true identity. All because you dedicated a few minutes to inner peace, sustained by self-discipline. Presence also means noticing emotions the moment they arise. When someone feels irritation and observes it without reacting, they gain power. Inner peace appears like an invisible sword. You begin choosing who you want to be in that moment, and that strengthens your identity. It's almost as if mental clarity takes over the mind. But for that to happen, self-discipline needs to take the lead. Some authors recommend observation practices, like writing for 2 minutes about what you're feeling. It may seem simple, but it works miracles for presence. Writing makes the mind lighter, creates internal space, and brings inner peace. Suddenly, the person understands their own rhythm and finds mental clarity where there was only noise. And this reinforces their true identity. Of course, Turning this into a habit requires self-discipline. Notice how presence even changes the way you walk. When someone walks aware of each step, the weight of the body, the breath, anxiety decreases. Inner peace expands as if it had been released from a tight box. Mental clarity increases because nothing is fighting for attention. And identity strengthens when the person realizes they own their own pace. But yes, it takes self-discipline not to return to running without seeing the path. Perhaps the most powerful example is martial arts training, like Aikido or Jiu-Jitsu. There, presence determines everything. 1 second of distraction and the fight shifts. To maintain inner peace under pressure, absolute focus is needed. This focus creates mental clarity even amid chaos. And it's in this environment that the practitioner's identity is shaped through self-discipline. Presence has much to do with sensory perception. Think of that moment in the shower when you suddenly feel the water, the scent of the soap, the temperature. That is instant inner peace. You leave feeling different, with almost therapeutic mental clarity. And when this becomes a ritual, it transforms your identity deeply. However, it takes self-discipline to remember to practice this amidst daily rush. When someone masters presence, even problems seem easier to deal with. It's as if the person creates a small space between stimulus and reaction. That space is pure inner peace. There, the mental clarity needed to choose a response, instead of reacting automatically, is born. This process strengthens identity, showing who the person really is. And without self-discipline, that space disappears quickly. Presence transforms even silence. Silence stops being uncomfortable and becomes nourishing. The person feels inner peace fitting softly inside their chest, like coming home. Mental clarity increases, revealing solutions that were hidden before. All this shapes a more authentic identity. But embracing quiet moments in a noisy world requires self-discipline. A simple method to develop presence is taking conscious pauses during the day. Stopping for 10 seconds and breathing deeply already changes everything. This pause brings inner peace, even on difficult days. Over time, it improves mental clarity almost magically. And this consistency reinforces the identity the person wants to build. But as always, it comes with self-discipline supporting the habit. Presence also teaches living with more intention. Instead of waking up and just going through the day, the person starts choosing how they want to act. This creates inner peace because they're no longer in survival mode. Mental clarity appears like a ring of light illuminating the path. And this new posture strengthens identity as someone in control. But self-discipline is what keeps this state alive. When presence becomes a constant practice, relationships change too. Conversations become deeper, more honest, more human. Inner peace connects two people into a shared rhythm. Mental clarity prevents misunderstandings and builds bridges. This develops a more mature relational identity. And of course, it takes self-discipline to avoid emotional distraction. And the most interesting part is that presence opens the door to understanding something even greater about the human mind. Because when someone observes the now with such clarity, they begin noticing the influence of their own thoughts. A peculiar inner peace emerges, as if the world slowed down. Mental clarity shows that the problem is not always what happens, but how the mind reacts. And this discovery transforms identity deeply, preparing the ground for the next insight, the nature of thoughts. The human mind loves creating stories, often without asking for permission. When someone realizes this, they begin to see how thoughts command them unnecessarily. True freedom is born the moment they understand they don't need to believe everything the mind says. This simple recognition brings an immediate sense of inner peace. Presence grows as an internal force that stabilizes everything. And over time, this reshapes their identity in a profound way. Loose thoughts, when not observed, create enormous chaos. A person wakes up already thinking about what went wrong yesterday and what might go wrong tomorrow. The lack of mental clarity becomes an invisible weight. But when they learn to watch thoughts like clouds passing by, inner peace returns. This requires self-discipline because the mind tries to pull them back into confusion. And this practice begins strengthening their presence. Alan Watts used to say that overthinking is like trying to open a delicate lock with a hammer. Force doesn't help. What helps is awareness. the presence that observes thoughts without getting tangled in them. When someone does this, a kind of mental clarity takes shape. Inner peace makes the body feel lighter and softer, and the person feels their identity reorganizing, all starting with self-discipline. A simple exercise is imagining thoughts as cars passing on a street. They pass, they make noise, but you don't need to get inside every one of them. This metaphor brings presence to the moment. Inner peace appears because attention becomes selective. Mental clarity improves by reducing unnecessary stimuli, and identity becomes stronger, built through self-discipline. Excessive thinking creates dangerous illusions. The person imagines scenarios that will never happen and suffers because of them. They believe they're preparing, but they're only losing presence. When they notice this, they make room for liberating inner peace. Mental clarity emerges, showing that fighting everything is unnecessary. Identity becomes more serene, sustained by self-discipline. Eckhart Tolle talks about something powerful. The mind creates an imaginary self that needs constant problems to exist. This false self steals presence. When someone observes this process, they notice the internal manipulation. Inner peace arises almost ironically, realizing they were battling themselves. Mental clarity that follows is transformative, but staying free requires self-discipline to resist old habits. When someone observes their thoughts with curiosity instead of fear, everything changes. Thoughts stop being enemies and become information. This investigative presence releases inner peace, removing emotional weight. Mental clarity expands as if windows had been opened. Identity strengthens because they stop identifying with every wild thought. And this mental training depends entirely on self-discipline. A practical method is using the phrase, "I'm thinking that." The person doesn't say, "I am this," but "I'm thinking this." That small separation creates instant presence. Inner peace appears when they realize thoughts don't define reality. Mental clarity grows with this healthy distance, and identity aligns with truth, maintained by daily self-discipline. When someone stops fighting thoughts and simply observes them, something magical happens. Thoughts lose power. It's as if the mind understands it's no longer the absolute commander. Presence becomes the new captain of the ship. Inner peace spreads through the body. Mental clarity focuses direction, supported by self-discipline. The funny thing is that freedom from thought doesn't mean stopping thinking. It means thinking without suffering. The person discovers they can use thought as a tool, not as a tyrant. This practical presence brings inner peace even in moments that used to cause panic. Mental clarity reveals simpler solutions. Identity gains maturity, kept alive by self-discipline. Most people never question their own minds, so they live imprisoned. When someone challenges thought, the game changes. Presence becomes authentic. Inner peace arrives as a special guest. Mental clarity appears because they stop entering every thought that arises. Identity becomes lighter, and self-discipline keeps this posture alive. Some thoughts seem important but are just noise in disguise. When someone learns to recognize them, they save emotional energy. Presence filters what deserves attention. Inner peace grows, anxiety decreases, and clarity returns. Mental clarity becomes sharper. Identity becomes more stable, built through daily self-discipline. By understanding the nature of thoughts, the person realizes something deep. Suffering doesn't come from the thought itself, but from attachment to it. This discovery creates true presence. Inner peace enters quietly, almost shyly. Mental clarity reorganizes everything internally. Identity becomes stronger than any mental narrative, sustained by self-discipline. Freedom comes when the person accepts that thoughts will arise, but they don't have to follow them. They observe, breathe, and choose. This conscious presence gives power. Inner peace becomes a constant ally. Mental clarity expands, simplifying even the hardest problems. Identity becomes firm, anchored by self-discipline. And when someone realizes they are not a slave to their thoughts, something deep opens within them. A silent space full of presence. A kind of inner peace that is hard to describe. Mental clarity that gives courage to release even old memories. Identity transforms with this new perception, preparing the heart for the next step, letting go of the past. Letting go of the past seems simple in theory, But in practice, it's like trying to release a rope the mind insists on holding. Most people don't realize the invisible weight they carry. When a person decides to look at this weight with presence, something begins to soften inside them. Inner peace appears like unexpected relief. Mental clarity grows, illuminating memories that once felt enormous. And this begins to reshape their identity. The past is like an old movie. It has already been recorded, but the mind insists on replaying it. When someone uses presence to observe this habit, they realize they are living today with emotions from yesterday. This awareness creates space for a nearly medicinal inner peace. Little by little, mental clarity organizes everything, and identity stops being shaped by old pain. But this requires emotional self-discipline. Many people hold on to the past thinking that if they let go, they will lose part of their own story. But letting go is not forgetting, it's stopping the suffering. Presence allows someone to look back without hurting themselves. Inner peace appears when they realize they don't have to carry everything. Mental clarity separates learning from guilt, and identity matures with each release, supported by self-discipline. A powerful exercise is writing a letter to your own past. The person describes what hurt, what scarred, what marked them. Then they breathe deeply and thank the past for the lessons. This practice creates deep presence. Inner peace appears because the heart feels heard. Mental clarity organizes scattered emotions, guided by self-discipline. Some people hold grudges as if they were trophies. They think keeping pain protects them from getting hurt again. But presence reveals that holding a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. When someone releases this illusion, inner peace arrives like a warm embrace. Mental clarity shows that moving forward is always smarter, and identity strengthens, maintained by emotional self-discipline. Letting go of the past also means letting go of old expectations, those idealized versions of what should have happened. Presence helps someone see that every event happened exactly as it needed to. Inner peace grows when they accept this. Mental clarity unties internal knots, and identity aligns with the present through self-discipline. The mind likes to retell stories, emphasizing drama, but presence shifts the focus, allowing someone to notice neutral, even positive details. This change transforms how the memory is stored. Inner peace emerges when emotional weight decreases. Mental clarity helps reinterpret everything with more compassion, and identity renews itself, supported by self-discipline. Some therapists recommend revisiting memories as a future mentor. The person imagines their current self speaking to their past self. This creates therapeutic presence. Inner peace appears when they realize they can now offer support they once needed. Mental clarity restructures the meaning of past experiences. Identity gains emotional strength, built through self-discipline. Letting go of the past also involves forgiving oneself, which is often the hardest part. Presence helps someone see that, at that time, they did the best they could with what they knew. This understanding creates true inner peace. Mental clarity shows that continued self-punishment helps nothing. Identity flourishes when forgiveness finally happens. But this act requires inner self-discipline. Sometimes the past holds on because of people who were once important. Attachment to the idea of what they represented keeps the pain alive. Presence reveals reality without illusions. Inner peace appears when someone realizes that what was does not block what can be. Mental clarity organizes confusing emotions, and identity stops being defined by relationships that have already ended through self-discipline. Some people repeat old mistakes because they believe that's just how they are. They turn the past into a fixed identity. Presence breaks this cycle, showing that identity is something alive. Inner peace appears when they realize change is possible. Mental clarity opens new paths, and life takes a new direction, sustained by self-discipline. Letting go of the past is like cleaning an old house. Each removed object creates space for something better. Presence helps someone see which memories still serve and which have expired. Inner peace appears when the internal environment becomes more spacious. Mental clarity improves like windows being opened. Identity reorganizes itself with more authenticity. And this emotional process requires self-discipline. A powerful exercise is revisiting old photos, not to suffer, but to observe who you were and how you've grown. This conscious observation is pure presence. Inner peace appears when someone realizes they evolved more than they imagined. Mental clarity brings gratitude for the journey. Identity strengthens with healthy pride. But this only works with emotional self-discipline. The more someone releases the past, the lighter they become. Life stops being a drag and begins to flow. Presence opens this path. Inner peace becomes more constant. Mental clarity appears even on difficult days. And identity aligns with the adult self, supported by daily self-discipline. When someone realizes the past cannot be changed, but can be understood, life begins to expand. Presence shows that the only place with real power is the now. Inner peace grows like fertile soil ready for new seeds. Mental clarity reveals directions once hidden by pain. Identity renews itself with this clarity, preparing the heart to learn the next lesson, balancing being and doing. Most people live in an invisible race, always doing, producing, delivering, as if their worth existed only in movement. But when someone begins balancing doing with being, something shifts deep inside. Presence becomes a silent pillar guiding each action. Inner peace emerges without depending on speed or achievement. Mental clarity increases because the mind stops running without direction, and identity becomes stronger, less reactive, and more grounded. It's curious how people confuse productivity with personal value. They think they're only worthy when they're busy. But presence teaches that being comes before doing. Inner peace appears when this truth settles in. Mental clarity helps prevent impulsive decisions, and identity stops being based on performance, guided by self-discipline. A simple example is the habit of checking the phone compulsively. The person thinks they're doing something, but they're only overloading the mind. When they practice presence and pause for a moment, an almost forgotten inner peace arises. Mental clarity returns like a relieved sigh. Identity realigns with something more authentic and calm. But this only lasts with daily self-discipline to resist automatic impulses. The balance between being and doing is also present at work. Someone can spend the whole day executing tasks and still feel empty and exhausted. Presence shifts this dynamic. It brings focus and intention to each action. Inner peace replaces the anxiety of trying to handle everything at once. Mental clarity allows intelligent prioritizing, held by self-discipline. The practice of being doesn't mean becoming someone still and silent all day. It means acting with quality, not quantity. Presence helps use emotional energy more strategically. Inner peace supports healthier decision-making. Mental clarity cuts what is excessive and unnecessary. Identity becomes more stable through consistent self-discipline. Many elite athletes understand this balance. They know training without rest destroys the body. Pause is as important as effort. Presence teaches the same principle for life. Inner peace grows in conscious resting moments. Mental clarity expands as the mind breathes, requiring self-discipline. A great exercise is creating micro-moments of being throughout the day. Stopping, taking a breath, relaxing the body for 10 seconds. As simple as that. Presence grows in these small rituals. Inner peace settles gently inside the chest. Mental clarity adjusts the mind, all sustained by self-discipline. The problem with doing too much is that it creates a false identity. The person begins believing they only exist while producing. Presence dismantles this illusion. Inner peace appears when the mind realizes it doesn't need constant proving. Mental clarity brings more human, slower, wiser choices. Identity roots itself in truth, practiced through self-discipline. There is also the opposite extreme, someone who stays only in being and never acts. This person dreams a lot, but executes little. Presence brings balance by showing that the present also asks for movement. Inner peace does not exclude discipline. Mental clarity offers direction for each step. Identity strengthens through conscious action, fueled by self-discipline. The secret is recognizing when to act and when to pause. Presence becomes the inner sensor that adjusts this automatically. Inner peace appears when the person learns to trust this sensor. Mental clarity grows by accepting that pushing the world alone is unnecessary. Identity develops autonomy and self-respect. But keeping this equilibrium requires ongoing self-discipline. Many people start the day already in doing mode. But imagine starting in being mode. The person wakes up, breathes, feels the body, observes the moment. This presence changes the entire day. Inner peace accompanies every action. Mental clarity prevents overload, supported by self-discipline. Even in conversations, this balance appears. Someone who lives only in doing, talks a lot, and listens little. Presence teaches listening with the entire body. Inner peace makes the interaction lighter and deeper. Mental clarity reveals nuances normally missed. Identity becomes more empathetic, trained through self-discipline. A practical trick: before acting, ask, "Is this coming from my being or from my hurry?" This single question activates presence instantly. Inner peace offers the most centered answer. Mental clarity evaluates the real impact of the action. Identity shapes itself with wiser choices. But this habit only grows with deliberate self-discipline. When someone finds the balance between doing and being, they move in a rhythm that feeds the soul. They don't burn out from excess, nor freeze from fear. Presence keeps everything aligned internally. Inner peace protects emotional stability. Mental clarity guides every step without chaos. Identity becomes refined through consistent self-discipline. And it's in this balance that they begin noticing something important. Most anxiety comes from excessive doing, and most stagnation from excessive being. This realization only appears with intense presence. Inner peace helps navigate both worlds. Mental clarity points to the middle path, and identity evolves, preparing the mind to face the next challenge: overthinking. Overthinking is that silent thief that walks through the front door when you least notice it. A person believes they are analyzing when they are actually drowning in imaginary scenarios. Lack of presence keeps pulling them away from what is real. When they return their attention to the moment, inner peace begins to appear. Mental clarity shines like a lighthouse in the fog, and this strengthens their identity in the face of internal fears. The mind loves to create dramatic stories. What if it goes wrong? What if no one likes it? What if I'm doing everything wrong? These what-ifs are fear's best friends. Presence cuts this spiral immediately. Inner peace softens the emotional noise. Mental clarity shows that most of these scenarios will never exist. Identity becomes safer, supported by self-discipline. A powerful trick is asking, "What is happening right now?" This question brings instant presence. Inner peace grows as the body realizes it is safe in the present moment. Mental clarity separates facts from imagination. Identity becomes more grounded and stable. But repeating this question requires self-discipline when the mind dramatizes. Fear often appears in moments of decision. The person feels a knot in the stomach and imagines catastrophes. But with presence, they see fear as misinterpreted energy. Inner peace strengthens when they breathe and welcome that energy. Mental clarity shows the real decision instead of the imagined one. Identity grows when they choose action over avoidance through self-discipline. Overthinking creates problems that didn't even exist 5 minutes earlier. The person builds castles of worry and then tries to destroy them. Presence prevents this emotional waste. Inner peace grows as the mind becomes less crowded. Mental clarity proves that simplicity is always better. Identity stops being shaped by frightened thoughts, thanks to self-discipline. An interesting exercise is the fear on paper technique. The person writes exactly what they are afraid of. Seeing the sentence clearly reveals the exaggeration. Presence increases because they look directly at their fear. Inner peace comes when the brain understands things are not that dramatic. Mental clarity organizes the chaos, supported by self-discipline. Fear is not an enemy, it is a messenger. It appears when something matters. Presence allows someone to listen without panic. Inner peace embraces that message gently. Mental clarity interprets it with precision. Identity becomes more mature, trained by self-discipline. Comparison also fuels fear. A person looks at others' lives and feels behind. Presence cuts this illusion by reminding them that every path has its own timing. Inner peace grows when they return to their rhythm. Mental clarity shows that comparison leads nowhere. Identity becomes more authentic, strengthened by self-discipline. Overthinking is often born from lack of rest. A tired mind invents monsters where only shadows exist. Presence helps someone notice their need to slow down. Inner peace returns when the body finally rests. Mental clarity sharpens like a polished mirror. Identity strengthens when well-being becomes a priority, with self-discipline. When faced with real fear, not imagined fear, the person realizes survival is easier than the mind suggests. Presence helps them see the situation as it is. Inner peace rises from clarity. Mental clarity creates practical steps like asking for help or changing strategy. Identity expands with every small victory, but not running away requires self-discipline. Another method is dividing fear into 3 parts: fact, possibility, and fantasy. Presence reveals which category each fear belongs to. Inner peace arises when they notice most of it was fantasy. Mental clarity highlights what truly matters. Identity gains confidence dealing with the real part. This clarity requires analytical self-discipline. Overthinking also comes from trying to control the uncontrollable. The person imagines that thinking harder will prevent pain. Presence shows that excess thinking creates more suffering than it avoids. Inner peace appears when they accept what cannot be controlled. Mental clarity grows by focusing on what depends on them. Identity becomes lighter, supported by self-discipline. Many times, fear disguises itself as procrastination. The person delays something because they fear failing. Presence makes it clear that postponing only increases the weight. Inner peace appears with a single small action. Mental clarity appears as progress happens. Identity is rebuilt as someone capable, maintained by self-discipline. Fear weakens when shared with someone trustworthy. Speaking about it creates emotional presence. Inner peace grows because the weight is divided. Mental clarity appears through new perspectives. Identity becomes more resilient. But opening up requires social courage and self-discipline. And the most interesting part is that when someone observes fear through presence, they see most of it doesn't even belong to the present moment. It is a shadow created by the mind itself. When this shadow dissolves, inner peace expands like warm light. Mental clarity reveals the path forward. Identity strengthens with this new perception, creating the perfect doorway to understand the true gift of the present. Today is a gift, and the present moment is the only place where life truly breathes. Presence reveals this truth with simplicity, without needing dramatic explanations. Inner peace blooms when a person realizes they don't need anything extra to feel whole. Mental clarity appears when they focus on what is actually happening. Identity becomes more authentic because it no longer depends on illusions. And this way of living requires self-discipline to stay awake to the now. People waste priceless moments thinking they're ordinary. But when they practice presence, even the most common moment becomes extraordinary. That warm cup in the hand, that breeze entering the window, that smile from someone close. Inner peace arrives in these small details. Mental clarity helps the mind savor simplicity without rushing. Identity grows more aligned with gratitude, supported by self-discipline. The present moment is the only time where action exists. Everything else is memory or imagination. Presence teaches that the person doesn't need to wait for tomorrow to live. Inner peace arises when they embrace what's here. Mental clarity shows what truly needs to be done. Identity becomes stronger through these conscious choices, sustained by self-discipline. One of the most beautiful gifts of the present is the feeling of enough. The person stops needing more and starts appreciating what is already here. Presence anchors this perception deeply. Inner peace settles when they stop chasing validation. Mental clarity reveals abundance in what they already have. Identity evolves into someone fulfilled, cultivated through self-discipline. Being present turns simple routines into rituals of appreciation. Brushing teeth, washing dishes, making the bed. All of this can become meditation. Presence transforms the ordinary into sacred time. Inner peace expands when the mind stops resisting. Mental clarity increases, shaped through self-discipline. Another powerful gift of the present is connection. When someone gives true attention to another, the relationship transforms. Presence makes the other person feel seen. Inner peace deepens emotional bonds. Mental clarity improves communication. Identity becomes more empathetic, trained through self-discipline. The present is also the birthplace of creativity. Ideas don't come from the past or future. They emerge here. Presence creates mental space for inspiration. Inner peace calms internal noise. Mental clarity organizes ideas with precision. Identity embraces its creative nature, supported by self-discipline. The gift of the present is most noticeable in nature. Watching the sky, listening to birds, feeling the warmth of the sun. Presence makes these details vibrant. Inner peace fills the body like a soft wave. Mental clarity sharpens as the mind relaxes. Identity becomes more connected to life, strengthened by self-discipline. A great exercise is taking a mindful pause throughout the day, just noticing the breath or the temperature in the air. Presence grows with these small pauses. Inner peace enters slowly and naturally. Mental clarity becomes cleaner and lighter. Identity becomes more aligned, maintained by self-discipline. The present moment prevents unnecessary suffering. Most suffering comes from stories the mind invents about tomorrow or yesterday. Presence breaks this cycle instantly. Inner peace enters like a balm. Mental clarity reveals that the now is rarely unbearable. Identity grows more resilient, trained through self-discipline. Gratitude also becomes more natural in the present. The person doesn't need a big reason to be grateful. Presence makes small things shine. Inner peace grows with each recognition. Mental clarity helps identify what truly matters. Identity becomes more grounded, supported by self-discipline. When someone learns to truly appreciate the now, they stop rushing through life. Presence slows them down, but in a healthy way. Inner peace touches every action. Mental clarity eliminates mental clutter. Identity becomes more refined and aware. And this way of living requires self-discipline. The present moment is generous because it doesn't demand perfection. It only asks for attention. Presence teaches that being here is enough. Inner peace appears without requirements. Mental clarity organizes decisions with calm precision. Identity becomes more centered, practiced with self-discipline. People who live in the present smile more. They carry fewer emotional weights. Presence keeps life lighter. Inner peace settles inside like a quiet friend. Mental clarity guides steps with accuracy. Identity becomes more joyful, cultivated through self-discipline. And the most beautiful part is that living in the present makes the person ready for everything that comes next. Presence creates inner space for real transformation. Inner peace prepares the heart for new lessons. Mental clarity allows deep understanding. Identity becomes more awakened, opening the path for the next step, learning how to manage the mind instead of being managed by it. Thoughts are like bottles floating in a river. Some carry wisdom, others carry pure confusion. Presence teaches someone to choose which ones to pick up and which to let pass. Inner peace grows when they stop grabbing every thought that appears. Mental clarity develops as they learn to filter rather than follow. Identity strengthens when they stop being controlled by mental noise. And this skill requires consistent self-discipline. The mind was meant to serve, but most people let it command. Presence exposes this inversion gently. Inner peace arrives when the person realizes they no longer need to obey every thought. Mental clarity appears as mental storms lose intensity. Identity becomes freer and more stable. But this shift only holds with ongoing self-discipline. A practical way to make the mind an ally is labeling thoughts. Here comes fear. Here comes comparison. Here comes imagination. This simple acknowledgement is presence in action. Inner peace softens emotional reactions. Mental clarity organizes the inner environment. Identity gains authority through self-discipline. Thoughts are not the problem. Attachment to them is. Presence creates space between the thought and the reaction. Inner peace grows in this small but powerful distance. Mental clarity shows that not every thought deserves attention. Identity learns to choose which internal voices matter. And this choice is maintained by self-discipline. A useful exercise is mental redirection. When an intrusive thought appears, the person consciously shifts focus to something real. Presence strengthens with this intentional movement. Inner peace comes from steering the mind instead of being dragged by it. Mental clarity improves as attention becomes more selective. Identity learns autonomy, supported by self-discipline. The mind becomes an ally when someone stops feeding unnecessary dramas. Presence cuts emotional fuel. Inner peace reduces the intensity of imagined problems. Mental clarity highlights what truly deserves energy. Identity becomes more objective and steady. And this mindset shift requires daily self-discipline. Many thinkers compare the mind to a wild horse. If left loose, it runs anywhere. But with presence, it can be guided with precision. Inner peace is the reins, soft and firm. Mental clarity is the direction chosen. Identity becomes the one leading, with self-discipline as the practice. The person also learns to challenge thoughts compassionately. Is this true? Is this useful? Is this mine? Presence grows with these questions. Inner peace arises when the mind stops dominating everything. Mental clarity brings smarter conclusions. Identity gains emotional intelligence, sustained by self-discipline. The mind becomes an ally when someone feeds it with quality. Good books, good conversations, good silence. Presence absorbs information with depth. Inner peace rejects mental pollution. Mental clarity thrives in healthy environments. Identity becomes richer, nurtured through self-discipline. Meditation is an excellent training ground for this transformation. It teaches watching thoughts without following them. Presence becomes sharper. Inner peace expands in the empty spaces. Mental clarity gains strength as the internal noise decreases. Identity discovers a more spacious version of itself, built through self-discipline. When the mind works in favor of the person, even problems become simpler. Presence prevents exaggeration. Inner peace reduces panic. Mental clarity reveals solutions that were always there. Identity becomes more strategic and calm. This mastery is only possible with deliberate self-discipline. Another method is practicing mental minimalism. The person chooses fewer thoughts to believe. Presence filters what matters. Inner peace rests in simplicity. Mental clarity becomes sharper than ever. Identity becomes precise, refined by self-discipline. The mind becomes an ally when someone stops expecting it to be perfect. Presence accepts its imperfections. Inner peace grows when pressure decreases. Mental clarity increases as judgment fades. Identity becomes more compassionate. And compassion also requires self-discipline. Many people fear their own mind, but presence helps them make peace with it. Inner peace takes the sting out of difficult thoughts. Mental clarity organizes emotional confusion. Identity becomes more integrated and whole. The mind stops being an enemy and becomes a partner. This integration comes from steady self-discipline. And when someone finally understands they can guide their mind instead of being shaped by it, a new horizon opens. Presence becomes a trusted companion. Inner peace takes root deeply. Mental clarity becomes constant and accessible. Identity expands with this new inner power, preparing them for the next profound lesson, embracing impermanence and acceptance. Impermanence is one of life's deepest truths, and precisely for that reason, so many people try to ignore it. When someone practices presence, they begin to see that nothing remains the same for long. This perception awakens an inner peace that comes from acceptance, not control. Mental clarity expands when the person understands that fighting the inevitable only causes suffering. Identity reshapes itself as they learn to evolve along with change. And all of this blooms through emotional self-discipline to stop resisting life's flow. The signs of impermanence are everywhere, even in the smallest things. Coffee cools, conversations change tone. The routine transforms before our eyes. With presence, a person starts noticing beauty in details that once seemed common. Inner peace grows when they stop demanding that everything stay constant. Mental clarity reveals that every cycle has its natural purpose. Identity strengthens when they embrace this dance, guided by self-discipline. Suffering often comes from trying to keep everything exactly as it is. People try to freeze moments, people, and feelings, as if resisting change would protect them. But presence reveals that holding on to what wants to leave only prolongs pain. Inner peace appears when someone finally releases what they cannot control. Mental clarity illuminates the path for new chapters to begin. Identity renews itself through this release, anchored by self-discipline. Breathing is a perfect reminder of impermanence happening right now. Every inhale is born, grows, and ends without resistance or drama. Practicing presence in the breath teaches someone to embrace this natural cycle. Inner peace arises as they accept this rhythm as healthy and necessary. Mental clarity increases because the mind learns to flow rather than cling. Identity adapts to the understanding that everything has a beginning, middle, and end through self-discipline. Impermanence is strongly present in relationships as well. Some people arrive to teach, others to accompany, and others only to pass through briefly. Presence allows someone to honor each connection without desperate attachment. Inner peace softens the pain of inevitable goodbyes. Mental clarity organizes emotions that once felt messy and overwhelming. Identity becomes less dependent, supported by emotional self-discipline. Even identity itself is impermanent, changing as experiences accumulate meaning. What someone believed years ago may hold no truth today, and that's okay. Presence helps them observe this evolution without guilt or shame. Inner peace appears when they embrace their previous versions with compassion. Mental clarity reveals that growth is part of life's natural process, and this flexibility only exists when self-discipline supports self-observation. Old photos reveal how everything changes, the expression, the smile, the way of thinking. Presence turns this moment into gratitude rather than sad nostalgia. Inner peace arises when the person realizes each version was necessary to reach this one. Mental clarity contextualizes memories that once felt confusing. Identity enriches itself with this compassionate perspective. But facing this internal mirror requires constant emotional self-discipline. Much human suffering comes from the desire to control the uncontrollable. Presence exposes this habit with uncomfortable but liberating clarity. Inner peace emerges when a person accepts that they cannot command everything. Mental clarity appears when they focus only on what truly depends on them. Identity matures when they understand that letting go is also an act of strength, and emotional self-discipline is needed to maintain this posture. Impermanence also brings good news. Pain does not last forever. Presence helps someone perceive that emotions come and go like waves. Inner peace grows when they stop resisting the natural rhythm of feeling. Mental clarity guides them through these emotional waves without drowning. Identity strengthens through the resilience built in each cycle. But navigating these waters requires self-discipline to not run from one's own pain. Just as pain passes, joy also passes, and that is beautiful. Presence reveals that the beauty of the moment lies in its fragility. Inner peace grows when someone enjoys the now without fearing its ending. Mental clarity shows that nothing needs to be eternal to be valuable. Identity becomes more present, more alive, more connected. And this deep appreciation requires daily self-discipline. Impermanence gives meaning to time and to every experience we collect. Presence helps someone feel this preciousness without needing extraordinary events. Inner peace appears when they notice that everything carries significance. Mental clarity helps reorder priorities with more wisdom. Identity aligns with a more intentional and conscious way of living. But remembering this truth daily requires ongoing self-discipline. Accepting impermanence also means accepting vulnerability, and that is not weakness. Presence allows someone to face this truth with an open heart. Inner peace emerges when the illusion of invincibility fades. Mental clarity reveals the true role of vulnerability in growth. Identity matures when they embrace their humanity with courage. But this courage requires emotional self-discipline to stay honest with oneself. A transformative practice is expressing gratitude knowing that something may not exist tomorrow. This creates deep and sincere presence in the moment. Inner peace expands as the person values what they have right now. Mental clarity separates the essential from the unnecessary. Identity realigns with a more mature, conscious version of self. But this kind of gratitude requires consistent self-discipline. When someone accepts impermanence, they live lighter. They stop forcing connections, holding on to pain, or fighting against life's natural flow. Presence makes each moment breathable. Inner peace stays even on difficult days. Mental clarity reorganizes once chaotic emotions. Identity becomes resilient, sustained by self-discipline. And it is by accepting that everything changes that a person discovers something powerful. Behind all impermanence exists a natural wisdom guiding life. Presence opens the eyes to this invisible intelligence. Inner peace grows from trusting this flow. Mental clarity deepens as they notice purpose in each cycle. Identity expands, preparing the mind for the next lesson on practical wisdom. Practical wisdom is the art of living with intelligent simplicity, without complicating what is already simple. Presence allows someone to see that life rarely demands complex formulas to work well. Inner peace arises when the person learns to do the obvious with consistency. Mental clarity grows as they differentiate the essential from daily noise. Identity strengthens with small conscious decisions, and each decision requires self-discipline to become a habit. Be water, my friend, Bruce Lee used to say, teaching that practical wisdom is adaptability. Presence helps a person observe a situation before acting, just like water. Inner peace emerges when they choose to flow instead of forcing everything. Mental clarity reveals that flexibility is far more powerful than brute strength. Identity is shaped by this conscious fluidity, but this skill is cultivated through emotional self-discipline. Another wise phrase says, "When you work, work. When you play, play." Presence guarantees full focus on each moment without mixing tasks. Inner peace grows because the mind stops trying to be in two places at once. Mental clarity increases with this simple yet powerful focus. Identity becomes more organized and less anxious. But practicing this requires self-discipline to avoid modern distractions. Practical wisdom also means caring for the basics, sleeping well, eating well, and moving the body. Presence reveals the signals the body sends, loud and clear, when it is being neglected. Inner peace strengthens when essential care is respected. Mental clarity improves enormously with these simple habits. Identity becomes more stable and grounded, but maintaining this requires self-discipline, especially on lazy days. A practical method is the single-task rule. Choose one task and do only that. Presence ensures complete attention during action. Inner peace grows because the mind stops scattering itself. Mental clarity makes the process lighter and more efficient. Identity begins to see itself as disciplined and attentive. But this focus only grows with daily self-discipline. Another pillar of practical wisdom is speaking less and observing more. Presence allows someone to notice details lost in noise. Inner peace comes from listening without the rush to respond. Mental clarity emerges from processing information more deeply. Identity transforms as the person acts with better precision. And this quiet attentiveness requires steady self-discipline. Reading good books is a powerful way to develop practical wisdom. Presence helps absorb what truly matters instead of merely memorizing words. Inner peace appears when reading becomes a moment of pause. Mental clarity strengthens with new insights and reflections. Identity grows with each added piece of knowledge. But creating a reading habit requires intentional self-discipline. A simple strategy is taking conscious micro-breaks throughout the day. Presence turns these pauses into mental recharging moments. Inner peace arises in these small pockets of silence. Mental clarity improves because the brain rests between tasks. Identity organizes itself with this more human rhythm. But remembering these breaks requires self-discipline. Practical wisdom also involves knowing when to say no. Presence reveals when the mind and body are overloaded. Inner peace flourishes when healthy boundaries are respected. Mental clarity increases when unnecessary tasks are eliminated. Identity strengthens with choices aligned to personal values. But saying no requires emotional courage and self-discipline. Life becomes lighter when a person chooses the simple path over the complicated one. Presence helps avoid excesses that generate stress. Inner peace appears when the mind stops complicating the obvious. Mental clarity grows with objective, straightforward actions. Identity strengthens as it is guided by simplicity. But conscious simplicity depends on self-discipline. A powerful practice is reviewing the day before sleep. Presence allows someone to look at their actions without harsh judgment. Inner peace arises from a feeling of gentle closure. Mental clarity helps adjust the next day's direction. Identity evolves through these nightly micro-reflections. But maintaining this ritual requires daily self-discipline. Practical wisdom also means understanding that each person has their own timing. Presence prevents unnecessary comparisons. Inner peace grows when someone focuses on their own journey. Mental clarity shows there is no late or early, only process. Identity becomes more confident and steady. But this requires self-discipline to avoid inputs that distort perception. The environment strongly influences the mind's quality. Presence helps someone notice which places energize or drain them. Inner peace grows when they choose healthier environments. Mental clarity thrives in organized, calm spaces. Identity becomes more positive and aligned. But choosing the right environment requires intention and self-discipline. Practical wisdom recognizes that the simple and the profound walk together. Presence brings depth even to the most ordinary actions. Inner peace grows as the everyday becomes meaningful. Mental clarity appears when someone values what has always been there. Identity transforms with this new sensitivity. But this awareness is cultivated through self-discipline. And as a person applies practical wisdom, they notice something powerful. Living well is not complex. Presence shows that small, conscious actions shift everything around them. Inner peace becomes more constant and accessible. Mental clarity guides each step more lightly. Identity evolves into a more intentional, intelligent state, opening space for the next insight, what it means to live fully. Living fully does not mean having a perfect life, but being awake to what is happening now. Presence helps someone realize that living is not surviving or waiting for better days. Inner peace arises when they release the need to accelerate everything. Mental clarity appears when they understand that true value is in the present moment. Identity strengthens when they decide to participate in their own life. And living this way requires self-discipline to avoid falling into automatic behavior. Many people live as if they have infinite time, postponing everything for later. Presence reveals that later is not a real moment, it is a comfortable illusion. Inner peace appears when the person acts today, even without perfection. Mental clarity dissolves invisible excuses that keep life stagnant. Identity blossoms when they see themselves as the author of their story. But this shift only happens with daily self-discipline. Living fully means feeling, not just thinking about feeling. Presence helps someone experience emotions with authenticity. Inner peace arises when they stop running from themselves. Mental clarity reveals that emotions are not enemies, but messages. Identity expands as they embrace this human depth. And this growth is only possible with emotional self-discipline. Small joys of the day are invitations to live more deeply. Presence highlights the smell of coffee, the wind on the skin, the unexpected laugh. Inner peace grows in these simple pauses the mind usually ignores. Mental clarity helps someone savor the ordinary as something extraordinary. Identity transforms as they learn to appreciate these moments. But this appreciation requires self-discipline to slow down. Living fully also means taking conscious risks. Presence helps differentiate real fear from imagined fear. Inner peace appears when action replaces paralysis. Mental clarity guides decisions with courage instead of impulsiveness. Identity evolves when the person proves they can move forward despite fear. But this courage is only built through self-discipline. Life gains depth when someone stops living only for survival. Presence broadens their horizon beyond obligations. Inner peace arises when they choose based on what truly matters. Mental clarity exposes how often they live by habit instead of intention. Identity strengthens as they break automatic patterns. But breaking patterns requires consistent self-discipline. Living fully also means creating real connections. Presence turns superficial conversations into meaningful exchanges. Inner peace appears when someone allows themselves to be authentic. Mental clarity helps them choose who deserves closeness. Identity blossoms in these genuine relationships. But nurturing depth requires emotional self-discipline. Curiosity is another key to a full life. Presence encourages exploring new ideas, places, and versions of oneself. Inner peace emerges as the person opens space for the new. Mental clarity grows with each expanded experience. Identity becomes richer and more versatile. But this expansion requires self-discipline to leave the comfort zone. Living fully is also about serving, contributing, making a difference. Presence shows that impact does not depend on size, but on intention. Inner peace arises when someone helps without expecting anything in return. Mental clarity reveals where their contribution is most useful. Identity matures as they recognize their value in the collective. And consistent service requires self-discipline. Plenitude also appears in the art of enjoying solitude. Presence reveals that being alone does not mean being empty. Inner peace rises in those silent moments of self-encounter. Mental clarity expands when someone listens to themselves honestly. Identity rebuilds itself in these intimate dialogues. But appreciating solitude requires self-discipline to avoid escape. Living fully means allowing mistakes without self-destruction. Presence helps someone see that mistakes are part of the path. Inner peace appears when guilt stops controlling everything. Mental clarity reveals important lessons within each slip. Identity strengthens as failures become emotional intelligence. But this transformation requires self-discipline to keep trying. A full life is a life with purpose, even a small one. Presence shows signs of what truly excites the heart. Inner peace grows when they follow that direction. Mental clarity filters distractions that steal energy. Identity aligns with something greater than routine. But following purpose requires self-discipline and commitment. Living fully also involves setting boundaries. Presence helps someone notice when something crosses the line. Inner peace grows when they respect themselves. Mental clarity shows how to protect energy and time. Identity reaffirms itself through healthy limits. But maintaining boundaries requires emotional self-discipline. Plenitude is not the absence of pain, but the presence of awareness. Presence helps someone move through difficulties without losing their center. Inner peace remains even in turbulence. Mental clarity finds strength where it seemed impossible. Identity evolves in the middle of storms. But this emotional balance depends on continuous self-discipline. And when someone lives fully, they discover a deep truth. Being alive is a privilege. Presence intensifies this sense of wonder toward existence. Inner peace appears when they realize that living is more than existing. Mental clarity reveals that every second is a chance to begin again. Identity expands with this feeling of real life, opening the perfect loop for the next steps of transformation. Now that you've seen the weight of thoughts, the power of the now, and the impact of living truly awake, the question is simple. What will you do with all of this? Will you listen and return to the automatic routine, or use this awareness to transform your life from the inside out? Because presence is not a pretty idea, it is a daily choice. A choice that demands courage, self-discipline, and a true commitment to your best self. This moment right here defines whether you stay the same or break through. And that decision begins now. Pause for a few seconds and ask yourself honestly, how many moments have you lost for being stuck in your mind? How many opportunities disappeared because fear spoke louder than you? How many connections could have been deeper if you had been truly present? The answers may hurt, but they also free, because they show exactly where change begins. Awareness is the first step toward real inner peace. You don't need to change the entire world today. You only need one step. Be here. Feel the now. See what life is offering you in this exact second. This is how inner peace enters. This is how mental clarity grows, and how a new identity is born, not through force, but through awareness. So before you leave, answer mentally. Do you want to keep existing, or do you finally want to start living? If your answer is to live, truly live, stay with me on this journey. There will be depth, transformation, and presence. Each new video will strengthen this inner discipline that changes everything. And I'll be here, guiding you step by step. And of course, subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and continue learning about presence, clarity, and inner transformation. Your next chapter begins the moment you choose to stay conscious. The now is calling you, louder than ever. This is your invitation to wake up. This is your moment to live fully. And everything you need starts exactly here.